Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, professors, moderators, and all the members present here. I am Dipangshi Sohoria, and it is my honor to welcome you to the Assam Royal Global University, Guwahati, for the 18th International and 54th English Annual English Language Teachers Association of India Conference on exploring languages and literatures for evolving pedagogical practices. Today is the day one of the first plenary session, organized by English Language Teachers Association of India, hosted jointly by the Department of English, Royal School of Languages, Royal Global University, and Sonapur College, Sonapur, Assam. This plenary session is a cornerstone of our conference, bringing together some of the most brilliant minds in the field to share their insights and experiences. Today, we will explore folk poetics and praxis in storytelling, a Khasi oral epic, a subject that is both timely and crucial for the advancement of our pedagogical practices. It is my pleasure to invite our keynote speaker, Professor Desmond L. Cormaflang, Professor, Department of Cultural and Creative Studies, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. May I now request Professor Banani Das Hazarika, convener of the conference, to please felicitate our professor with a Fulam Gamusa, an airy shawl, and a memento. We are very honored and privileged to have you amongst us today, Professor. We also have Dr. Pratim Sharma, Principal, Hibahaga Girls College, Assam, who will be moderating today's session. May I request Sir Ayushman Debraj from the Department of English to please felicitate our sir with a Fulam Gamusa, an airy shawl, and a memento. Dr. Pratim Sharma is the principal of Hibahaga Girls College and former head in the Department of English at the Khomuk College, Assam. He holds a PhD in Organizational Studies from Dibrugarh University and postgraduate diplomas in the teaching of English and journalism and mass communication. He is a language trainer of aviation English for the Airports Authority of India and has been a columnist with the Assam Tribune since 1997. We are very honored and privileged to have you amongst today, sir. May I now request our speaker and our moderator to please join us on the stage. Please give a round of applause for the speakers of our plenary. May I now hand over this session to our moderator.
Check. Hello. Good afternoon, each and everyone here. We have first plenary, Professor Desmond L. Cormaflang. I am going to introduce him, and after that, he will be speaking on today's topic. Professor Desmond L. Cormaflang is a distinguished academic, poet, and folklorist. He also writes short stories. He has published collections of poetry and books on folklore and folkloristics. He has collected compiled and edited folk narratives and folk songs of Northeast India. He has held teaching positions as a visiting fellow and professor at various universities in India and abroad, such as in Switzerland, 1991, United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, 1995, and Norway, 1997, in the United States of America in 2002 and 2011, in Finland, 2002, in Greece, 2009, China, 2011, Indonesia, 2018, Italy, 2018, and the latest being the Diocesan Visiting Fellowship at Melbourne University, Australia, and Chulalongkorn University, Bangkok, and the Ca' Foscari University in Venice, Italy, and the University of South Wales at Cardiff in UK. He was also the Arts and Humanities Global Discovery Visiting Fellow, Ohio State University, USA in 2020. He was a special consultant of Khasi Wales Cultural Dialogues, a project to explore the shared cultural histories of the Wales and Khasi peoples, sponsored by the Leverhulme Trust UK. Professor Desmond is a member of the Folklore Society London and the American Folklore Society USA, and an associate member of the Folk Fellows instituted by the Finnish Academy of Science and Letters, Helsinki. Apart from these, Professor Desmond holds membership positions in committees on endangered languages, Central Institute of Indian Languages, Mysore, ASEAN, the Indian Network of Think Tanks, in 2018, academic committees of Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Shimla, in Academic Council, Tezpur Central University, in the Board of Studies of Tezpur University, Tripura University, and the Central University of Jharkhand, Center for Indian Knowledge System at IIT Guwahati. Professor Desmond is also an executive committee member of Khasi Authors Society and in the executive board of the Belief Narrative Network of the ISFNR, the International Society for Folk Narrative Research. Professor Desmond Karmoflang teaches folkloristics at Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. He's a principal investigator of the project Protecting Endangered Heritage in the Abode of Clouds, a project undertaken in collaboration with Melbourne University and sponsored by the British Library. He's also principal investigator of the project Folklore, Wildlife, and Nature, a study of their interrelationships, sponsored by the Northeastern Council, Government of India. So the northeastern part of India is culturally rich and socially diversified, as we know, with varied ethnic groups having numerous histories, mythologies, and identities. It has deep-rooted traditions in literature and folklore. Professor Desmond L. Karmoflang is one such poet and storyteller who desperately and emotionally tries to explore the identity through the connections to his roots. I wholeheartedly welcome Professor Desmond to this first plenary of ELTAI conference, who will be speaking on the topic Folk Poetics and Praxis in Storytelling, a Khasi Oral Epic. Sir, please. Yeah. His talk will be followed by Q&A. Thank you.
A very good afternoon, and thank you, sir, for the very warm welcome and the very detailed introduction that you had provided to the audience. I would like to express my sincere thanks to ELTAI, the English Language Teachers Association of India, and especially to Professor Lily Karboman, who's a very good friend. In a manner of speaking, we were colleagues. She used to teach at Evloing, which is also located on campus at Northeastern Hill University, and we used to have very frequent interactions. So this presentation, as you can see, will be about the folk poetics and praxis that are being deployed by storytellers belonging to my community, that is the Khasi community of the state of Meghalaya, which is in the neighborhood. I will also be talking about one particular oral epic which I documented quite some time back, and I will be talking about how it relates, how it demonstrates, and how it characterizes dimensions and aspects of storytelling that is in existence in my community. So the presentation is entitled Folk Poetics and Praxis in Storytelling, a Khasi Oral Epic. I come from a state which has given its name to an age marking 4,200 years of our planet's history. The Meghalayan age, which is considered to be the third part and the most recent of the Holocene age, is also the only age which has human cultural implications. It recorded the coincidence of the last post-Stone Age history of mankind. More importantly, it recorded the coincidence, in geological terms, it chronicles the explanations for the decimation of civilizations in India, in China, the Middle East, and North Africa through the occurrence of severe successive droughts. This startling discovery was made in a stalagmite found inside the precincts of the Maumulo cave near Sora or Cherrapunji in 2018. I'm sure most of you who are gathered here have visited Sora or Cherrapunji, and it is in this place that inside a cave, this stalagmite was discovered by geologists that this current age that we live in is called the Meghalayan age. 4,200 years later, we are replicating the primeval natural upheavals by weaponizing our imaginations and our actions and directing them to reducing the planet's lifespan through a relentless pursuit, a mindless pursuit of a largely violent development agenda. The epic which I will share with you, today also involves a story about a cave. It involves a story about a cave that in Khasi we call Kakrem Lamet Latang, which is mythic, of course. The story is familiar to most Khasis because it forms one of the cornerstones upon which our indigenous religion and philosophy rests. The epic talks about an apocalyptic period caused by a cosmic darkness that befell the world due to the sun's retreat from the firmaments, and its entry into the mythic Lamet Latang cave. It required the efforts of the cockerel, the rooster, who braved the obstacles and dangers of the underworld in entering the Lamet Latang cave in order to meet the sun and petition her. Yes, petition her, because the sun in my culture is female. And petition her to come out of the cave so that humanity would be delivered from the spell of darkness. The cockerel is called in Khasi Ulumboj Ulumbyang, which means the naked one. The cockerel was considered to be naked, without clothes. He had only one gift. He had the gift of poetry. He had the gift of song. He had the gift of verse. He had the gift of language. And armed with this gift, using it, he was able to persuade the sun to emerge from the Lamet Latang cave, and once again, light was restored to the world. I have prepared a short video clip of the performance of this epic, which I will share with you, which in its original form is over 3 hours. I hope that it will assist you in understanding how these long and complex super stories operate. Stories, as we all know, are about time and space. Like most human phenomena, the uses of telling a story as well as listening to it are as multifarious as the reasons and the occasions. A story is told to provide entertainment and information. A story is told to build mental escape routes for those troubled. A story is told to serve purposes of edification and dispensation of advice, or to initiate knowledge of history and religion. The value of stories depends also on their effectiveness and the standing that the teller has in her or his community. Having worked with storytellers all my life, I have learned to treat them with respect, both the professional as well as the occasional storyteller. The driven shaman singer whom you will see, and the secondary storyteller, the active and the passive bearer of tradition. In all of them, I find that there is a contemporaneity of engagement, a currency of involvement, and immediacy of application when we think about one of the underlined yet unspoken functions of stories, which is the call for encouraging the humane in dealing with life. At the same time, the creative energy and skill that informs the stories reveal that the state of mind verbalizing the inexpressible, transforming the mundane, and transporting the entire experience to a different level, a different realm. This realm is a seeking for a semblance of order, congruity, and very importantly, seeking for redemption. Life provides the raw material, and words stitch up the parts and fragments so that the story space is occupied by the different players seeking to find self-knowledge in the community and the world. The singing of stories, as we all know, is fundamentally about imagination, about memory, about words, and about performance. Among the Khasis, orality is a variously constructed term which is both significant as well as multivalent, that applies to the myriad genres of utterances, compositions, and performances, establishing vital connections between the human agency and culture through the enabling faculty of memory. Humans require memory in order to rationalize the essence of their everyday lives, and as such, it has a set of profoundly significant functions ranging from the psychosocial to biological to religious, economic, ideological, and cultural. And in turn, they constantly inflect our existence. My community first experienced literacy in 1842. That's hardly 180 years. And therefore, the Khasi community is largely oral. It's fundamentally believing in the sanctity of the word, which is considered to be a living entity once it is uttered. The religious discourse of the indigenous faith is largely oral, as you will see, and this essential quality of orality is demonstrated even in the banality of trade and commerce, where till today the market practice of reckoning of weights and measures is accomplished in indigenous oral systems. In oral cultures, memory functions as an instrument that does not only connect the present with the past, but that which makes sense of the world and its myriad dimensions. Memory is both collective and individual. And in both these constituencies, it sustains culture through tradition. Please allow me to explain and explicate this notion by citing from my language, the Khasi language. In my language, the word for memory is Mao, which means stone. In my language, the word for memory is Mao, and Mao means stone. Now, this demonstrates that the community computes its history through the megalithic or stone culture. Mao, as we understand it, stone, as we understand it, is not inanimate. It is organic because it actively participates in the production and reproduction of meanings and metaphors of life. It is connected to the tangible actions of the human materiality through hands. Work and action are implied, the reward of which is wage. And here, wage represents the faculty of an ability to recall. Therefore, memory, or Mao, is clearly embodied in culture. And the hermeneutics of recall in words or actions are critical to know not only what happened in the past, but also what determines the future and how the future can be known and how it can be interpreted. I'm going to briefly explain or introduce one of the most respected augurs and shaman storytellers that I have worked with, whose name is Desing Marin. The film clip is about the performance that you will see in a while. I was fortunate to have been accepted by this shaman storyteller, by his family, and by the village, and have become an adopted son of the cluster of villages where he used to live. I have seen him perform ceremonies and rituals on countless occasions during the many years of our friendship. He passed away on 30th of March, 2012. He was happy, as he confided to me, because he saw the flowering of bamboo twice in his life. In our parts, in the Khasi Hills, bamboo flowers once in 48 years. And this marks a very significant part of a human being's life. While he was an expert in the performance of ceremonies, including family and clan-based ones, his specialty was the chatparlen, of which you will see. The things, please make a note of the things that he used. The things used in this particular ceremony, which you will see, include the lengsam or an egg, a fistful of soil, rice grains, water, and most importantly, kadiplin dikanor, which can be described as a rectangular wooden slab curved on the sides with a small hollowed out projection for holding soil. That is the picture of Kadiplin Dikanor. Shaman storytellers hold that the Diplin Dikanor represents the tingkong, or the veranda, or the courtyard of the sun. This, metaphorically speaking, is the courtyard of the sun. Made exclusively of and fashioned from the wood of a tree which has been felled by lightning, Dising Marin and a host of storytellers would often refer to it as containing stories, holding stories, storing stories, which is a figurative way of saying that the use of Kadiplin Dikanor effectively keeps alive the collective memory of the community. It keeps alive the collective memory of the community. In this sense, it also functions as a metonymic device which is used to implement memory. The reference to the Diplin Dikanor as representing the veranda or the courtyard of the sun has to be understood in the context of the epic and the divination performance that it inspires. As you can see, the Diplin Dikanor, measuring roughly 9 inches by 5 inches, it's about 2 inches thick, and it has a rounded protuberant which is hollowed out. This receptacle is used to store soil, which is used during the divination purpose. And as you can also see, the Diplin Dikanor is divided into, for want of a better word, sections. There is no directly translatable term that I can find in the English language, so I'm using the word sections. And when eggs are cast upon this board, then it depends on how the fragmented shells of the broken eggs lie on the board that signs are read. Now, what we have then first is a ritual object. It is a ritual object, the Diplin Dikanor, which is used for divination purposes, but it also poetically describes, or it is described as representing an imagined solar habitational space of mythological and cosmic proportions, and which has an equivalence in and is understood in the architectural lexicon of humans. Second, the fact that the Diplin Dikanor can only be made of wood obtained from a tree that has been felled by lightning makes it very special. So it implies that you cannot just go into the jungle, obtain wood from any tree that you find, and make a Diplin Dikanor. No, it has to be obtained from the wood of a tree which has been felled by lightning. And the reasons for this are simple to me because I have studied this for many years. But the reason that this explanation is being offered is that, and I've asked Dising Marin many times, and the answer that has been provided to me is that there is a cosmogonic, familial, and sibling relationship in the Khasi belief system that has the Ram'o, or the Mother Earth, Urinko, the tutelary deity, the sun, the eldest daughter, Ubanai, the moon, the younger brother, Ka'um, water, which is again another sibling, Kal'er, wind, again another sibling, Uparthat, which is thunder, Kalaile, which is lightning, Ujumai, which is earthquake, and Kading, which is fire. Kading is considered to be the Kaddo, or the youngest daughter of in the cosmic scheme of things. And therefore, there is this connection between the Diplin Dikonor, which has to be fashioned from wood obtained from a tree felled by lightning, because it is in a cosmic way connected to all these elements. If it is understood in this context, then we see the relationship that exists in the construction of a ritual system involving the sun, which has to be placated with entries of prayer and poetry produced by the singer, who also uses the Diplin Dikonor, upon which signs of favorable disposition are displayed. The Diplin Dikonor then becomes a semiotic vehicle of communication, provided by lightning, using the youngest sister, that is fire, to make it available for use. Now, this is a fantastic cosmic cycle that is made available to us, and which is again being presented in the form of a performance and the singing of an epic. Therefore, we see how cosmogony is connected to a divination ceremony which is physically performed on a ritual object and which is enabled by the performance of epic poetry. The performance is aided also by other elemental objects such as water, soil, rice grains, and eggs. The epic has a form that is both narrative as well as profoundly dramatic. It is an enactment in which the celebrant virtually assumes the different roles of the characters involved in the story, and at the same time sustains the mainline narration through chanting and singing. The performance is suffused with great drama and remarkable telling skill, where word power, action, gesture, and voice modulation conflate into one profoundly total experience. The contents of the chants are cosmogony-oriented, in that it talks about the significant universal events. It contains lengthy discourses on traditional governance systems. It specifies or it classifies animal species. It provides description of real and imagined geographies and assorted knowledge system. The epic is driven by an ontological concern that constitutes the function, and lastly, as a context, it is apprehended by a ritual performance. I go to the performance of this epic now. This is only for 3 minutes because I've had to do a very cruel editing, to make it suitable for this particular occasion. The total epic takes about 3 hours.
Tu voiจะบำลังเมดหัวอะไรจะมาตัวเยอะ Tu dah thấy cái bấm nữa. Tu tu wo ya bam lang me do ho I like but over tu da thai ya bam me so khi đẹp ba cái tên đẹp có lệ tên đẹp có kinh có khai thế trong cái part so có lưng kinh có lưng khai có đi linh có đi nó rồi đi gạt đi lăng có cầm đi cầm sa thế là cốt là cả ta để sa tên ní thế phân riêng út đấy út thốt út không có là riêng cái phân giải út bút út cái thấy cái ít xem cái ít giết của mình năng thế mới sạch út ít nhất mới sạch ở dưới ngay xưa mới sạch ở sạch ở lâm quân xưa vì cái xưa ha chỗ cái xưa phân hiệp chỗ cái thế chính quân cái xưa cái đúng quân cái ba thế cái sanh cái ở sa tên ní thế cái bên cũng được cái bên ra được cái bên út được cái bên kia Berum optreden dat zijn zaken. En die en den nhau ruin besit bedeng boye boy lang santrai. Ngan cái đinh cái đinh cho chân răng nó cái đinh cho cái thẹn nó cái liệt cái thẹn nó cái xăm ta hàm nó cái mà bột đinh mình có lông xanh tôi áp là được không có muốn khóc cho tin là khi cái muốn này cha đi cái nát cái chạ cái đinh chân răng cái đinh cái lông xăm là cái tăng ăn cái tí thụ là phải chạy cái nó học mà bên đưa cái gì bên đưa cái ta gần bên đưa cái là bên đưa cái lập bên đưa cái bệnh bên đưa cái khó xí ngay tiếng anh đi cái tay cha tay đi tí cái bên sâm cái mẹ cái bên sạch cái mẹ xí lút cái ta tay trái tí cái thuốc cái bát trái tay tên cái khó xí cái sạch cái lính cái nợ chúng ta làm tính tăng ước bên này ước rốt mai ước tăng chừng ban con chim cái spa cái phù cái tăng cái bát sương mơ lúc sầm trời to biển mày dọn mày sầm mày dọn cả tôi cũng có muốn cái định định sang cái định cái ngoan trời apa usah head apa usah basi apa akut apa kasari si nâng long chu để cha để đi để cả thọ chu cả ta chu si nâng long chu cả cốt la chu si Itu budak.
Well, that was a very short clip of the epic performance, which, as I told you, runs to a little over 3 hours, in which the entire origin myth, the myth which talks about the disappearance of the sun from the sky when the sun decided to hide itself inside the Kremlamet Latang cave. So Dising, as you can see, he takes on the persona of the cockerel. He takes on the persona of the cockerel, and using his skill in poetry, in composing lines that were conceived to persuade the sun to come out of this, to persuade the sun to come out of the Krem Lamet Latang cave. That is what the performance was all about. But then it is also linked to a divination ceremony. So at the start of the ceremony, while you must have seen how he carefully prepares for the ceremony by washing the Diplin Dikanor, and he would have the necessary things at hand, the basket of rice grains, the shabak. Shabak is that wooden container that's supposed to store water when it is being used for such special purposes. Then the eggs, as you can see, and also soil. I think you do not miss the soil also, which is stored in that little repository, which was part of the Diplin Dikanor. Now, as you have seen, he would place rice grains on the four corners of the Diplin Dikanor, signifying the four corners of the earth. And he would chant. He would engage in a dialogue with the elements. And all the while, you must have seen him rolling the egg in the palm of his hand. The dialogue that he engages in is the recounting of this myth, which I told you about. And while chanting, you have seen him take, some soil from the receptacle of the Diplin Dikanor, mix it with water, and smear the mud on the egg while continuously rolling it in the palm of his hand. The way in which the story element in the epic is presented is not a style which is popular with, ordinary audiences, because the performance is too intense, the performance is too powerful, and it is too involved, okay? I have attempted translation of the entire epic, and my experience is that the narration is fraught, with terms and usages, sounds and exclamations that I believe are esoteric. I do not understand many of the terms that are being used, okay? And when I made this point to him, he said, well, they are used for a special purpose. There is a very special context for the using of those words. And then I realized that, later on, I realized that he was using also words that describe certain animals that have become threatened in those areas. Now, this is a myth which I recorded some 22 years back, and now I'm told that many of the animals, for instance, the mountain or the jungle goat, which he mentions very clearly, now that particular species of animal has become almost extinct, okay? So the spectacular thing about this epic is that it even records, it creates a very systematic taxonomy of plant life as well as wildlife. What I have tried to do is, I have rendered some what I can call sense translation, which is opposed to meaning translation. And this is there in my fourth book, the reproduction of this particular epic that I've just shown you. And the point that I'm trying to make is that, one has to be there to even understand or to even begin to absorb the telling power of this particular oral epic. The performance of the Chat Perlen is an extremely elaborate affair, and from it emanates one of the most important myths of the Khasis, which recounts the fetching of the sun by the cockerel from the Lamet Latang cave. And this epic constitutes a belief which is central to Khasi religious thought and philosophy. The passing down of the tradition of divination and the accompanying storytelling is from the maternal uncle to the nephew. Okay, so this tradition is passed on from Dising to his nephew, not to his son. This is because of the matrilineal system that we follow. This is in complete adherence to the matrilineal or to the matrilineal system of kinship followed by the Khasis. Lineage and descent are traced through the female, and children bear the surname of their mother and not the father. Therefore, Karmoflang is not really my father's surname, it is my mother's. And this tradition, if it was performed by a woman, it would pass on to her daughter. But in the case of males, in case of the uncle, it would pass on to the nephew. So this also means that the maternal uncle is also responsible for the conduct and maintenance of the clan religion, in which he functions literally as the lingdo or the priest. The divination chant of this epic is used and reused for as long as there is a need for it, and in this it presents itself as a multiplicity of variants. By going through the process of repetition, it gets reinvented. In the village community, I detect no attempt at all, no attempt made to record the chants either by scribal or electronic agency. Although there are sufficiently literate individuals, and some do possess tape recorders when I was working there. On inquiry, I was told, these stories are always there. This reply quite perturbed me, although I knew that the divination chanting of the epic is a tradition that the performer, Dising Marin, had inherited from his maternal uncle, Uni I. The tradition has been passed down through 5 generations. In fact, Dising disclosed to me that when he was a small boy, his clan identified and dedicated him as being special because his deceased grand maternal uncle had made a sajan, or a visitation, on him through signs and portents recognizable only by some clan members. And from that stage onwards, he was trained. He was treated differently, and he had to go through a very long apprenticeship under the tutelage of his maternal uncle, Uniwan. This information made me recognize the workings of the cognitive patterns of memory which is shared by a community which operates in the present even if the traditions are thought of in the past. While recollecting this past, the tradition gets processed through reinterpretation so that it becomes applicable to contemporary needs and realities. The epic is driven by an ontological concern that constitutes the function, and as a context, it is apprehended by a ritual performance. As I had mentioned earlier, the chanting involves the narration of an epic which is dramatized in very bold strokes. As an effective and often performed chant, the epic, during the process of transmission, carry endogenous systems of knowledge that are meaningful to the recipients, in this case, the members of the audience, although the cognitive responses may differ. The performance of the epic as a complete ceremony creates the essential spatial environment which is intrinsic to the tradition. The use of the metonymic objects such as the eggs, the diplin dikanor, rice grains, soil, and water, which are all elemental in nature, you will appreciate, are part of the spatial and contextual dispensation of the ceremony. The actions, the motions of the body, the intonations, the voice modulations supported by the powerful and theatrical delivery of poetry, while having its own unique semiotic value, elevates and transforms the performance into a total experience. The tradition of chanting proves to be a significant genre for comprehensive research. As a conduit of expression and communication, it thrives on the autonomous existence without indicating any need for rescue from obliteration or resorting to be inspired by a chirographic system. It has been vibrant over hundreds of years because the community feels the need for it and it is sustained by collective interpretation and reinterpretation. Oral literature in general and storytelling techniques, research in particular, is a stupendous task which demands a very disciplined pursuance of the various methodologies to be employed. It insists on having a robust sense of the semantic nuances governing the language in which stories are told. It requires a complete understanding of the cultural milieu of the societies in which the stories live. In Northeast India, where there are more than 150 ethnic communities speaking as many languages, the sustenance of storytelling tradition is complex. Because some of these communities have had for a very long time the advantage of script, either borrowed or indigenously developed, while others have experienced the written metaphors only as a result of white colonial and proselytizing interventions. Many of these communities live as neighbors, and the cultural exchanges between them have been profound and dramatic. These situations offer rich opportunities for the study of the oral-written continuum, the text and its transmission models, and in the societies where written cultural productions were attempted only as recently as less than 200 years, academic stimulations could be directed towards the oral-derived texts, genre dependence, and tradition-dependent studies. In conclusion, the multi-layering of other socio-cultural and political dynamics creates a fantastic canvas that would require the investment of resources and the convergence of professional interest to take up for inquiry the almost inexhaustible material that make up the folklore and the heritage of Northeast India. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a really enlightening and fascinating talk, sir. Your desire for roots and search for identity led to explore into the land's fascinating legends and myths. And you talked about the stories and memory as a connector of the past and present. And you underlined the unspoken functions of stories by discussing a Kasi myth chanting that performed in association with the divination ceremony and recounting an oral epic. Now the floor is open for discussion, Q&A sessions. We don't have much time. You must have questions in your mind. I request the audience, can you ask your questions? Thank you. Any volunteers? Yeah, the gentleman over there. There.
Hello, sir. First of all, I congratulate you, sir, for your wonderful presentation on the topic. Because as we know that preserving this story or storytelling is a very difficult task, and you are doing this one. So first of all, I congratulate you, sir. Sir, but there is one fear in my mind regarding the new generation. Because as we have seen in the ultra-modern age, in the age of globalization and technology, I have found that the younger generation, they have less interest in the oral tradition, because as I belong to the Nandurbar and Dhule tribal districts, I come to know that my students, they don't find that much interest in their traditional heritages, in their traditional kinds of the asset, which you have shown to us, which you have given knowledge regarding this one. So, sir, what kinds of the ways, or how can we overcome this? How can we find a more interest in the younger generation in the aspect of superstructural era or in the era of technology and globalization? Please, sir.
Hello. Thank you, sir, for your question. Am I audible? Yeah, the point that you have raised is indeed very pertinent because it is part of an ongoing experience that folklorists all over the world face. The younger generations are not or no longer interested in the past and so on. What are the ways in which, this interest can be inspired or revived and so on. There are a couple of points, to that. One of the things that we have to, I suppose, realize is that oral tradition is very much part of the human agency, especially in those communities that have had very, very recent experience with literacy, as in the Khasi community, like I said. But then, oral tradition is also something that, that has morphed, into many forms. It has taken many forms. It has developed variants and it has developed dimensions. Now, if you look at what's happening in the internet also, I mean, a great deal of what is happening in the internet is actually generated and inspired by oral tradition. Okay. The fact that we communicate using many forms, texting and so on and so forth, okay, that is also actually inspired by this innate desire, for sustaining old tradition of some kind. This is something that has also challenged or has posed interesting problems for folklorists in different parts of the world. And we can see, if we look at what's happened in the realm of the fairy tale, for instance, since the fairy tale is something that all of us can relate to quite swiftly, we find that there are makes and remakes of fairy tales, all right? We see the Cinderella story being remade, in documentary films and films and so on, okay? So it is not necessary, I think, that oral tradition can be taken in that very rigid sense, okay? But it shows its dynamism, by morphing into different forms of communication. So, what is very fundamental about our communication system is that it is really inspired by oral tradition. And one of the ways in which oral tradition, or one of the ways in which, performances such as these and narratives such as these can be made palatable to modern consumption, sorry to be using that phrase, but to be palatable for the consumption of kids and children and youngsters and so on, is to adopt, new means of communication. For instance, this epic has been converted into an animation film also in my language, and this has generated, a very encouraging response, in the younger people, who are actually forming small clubs, in trying to disseminate, these stories. See, as Professor Karbamon here can testify, this epic is a combination of many segments of narratives that are found, in different parts of areas inhabited by Khasis, but sometimes, they exist in disparate forms. Okay, but in the performance of this particular oral epic, all these stories in the versions and variants, they are brought together in a single form, and so in a unified form. Okay, so this is one way in which, so the creation of animation film for this particular epic is one step. The fact that I have also transcribed and translated this myth and produced it in book form has also created a great deal of interest, and I'm happy to say that on Friday, this coming Friday, the Academic Council of our university will sit to approve the syllabus of the 4-year undergraduate program in folklore and cultural studies, in which this myth will form a part of the components.
Good news. Congratulations on that. Maybe we can take 1 or 2 more questions. Not much time we have. Yeah, madam, please. Anybody with a microphone? Oh.
So one anxiety whenever we think about oral tradition being not appreciated by the younger generation, I do understand when you say that adapting these oral traditions to newer communication systems, social mediums, is a very, very relevant and a pertinent step forward. However, is there also an anxiety that once we move or adapt them to different mediums, so-called modern, contemporary, technological mediums, the sanctity that we attribute, the sense of indigeneity that we attribute, a sense of tradition that we attribute to orality, oral culture, is that an anxiety that we will lose that sense of sanctity? Is there that, anxiety as well? But this might also be a thought that would extend when we academize the entire process of folklore or cultural studies, bring it into the classrooms. Do we sanctify it in different ways?
Thank you for your question and comment, ma'am. In fact, the sanctity of this particular oral epic has been compromised just now. The fact that I'm sharing it with an audience that do not understand the cultural implications of this particular performance has compromised it to a degree. But I've done it strictly for academic purposes. I have no intention of undermining or subverting, the originality or the religiosity of this particular epic. It was only for pedagogical and academic reasons. Yes, of course. But there has to be ways and means of, disseminating this, because my interest in characterizing this particular oral epic and sharing it with you is to show the poetic, the narrative, the artistic, and the aesthetic dimensions, that completely suffuse this particular performance. It is something that when I first heard it, I was reminded of Geoffrey Chaucer. When I first heard it, I was reminded of Shakespeare. When I first heard it, I was reminded of Donne. And I thought, my goodness, this is something that has to be captured. This is something that I will have to share with my students. So this is why, I've chosen to talk about this.
Thank you, sir. I am told that a time is already over, but we can talk outside. Yes, definitely we can discuss outside. And thank you, sir, for this illuminating talk. And I thank the audience. I thank the audience for your active cooperation and participation. Thank you so very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you for the thought-provoking and enlightening presentation. Your insights have certainly provided us with much to ponder and discuss. Before we move on to the next part of our conference, a few quick announcements. We will now be having our lunch break until 2 p.m. Given to the participants. Please look followed by the lightning talks and paper presentations as scheduled.
Dear participants, the lunch for the participants will be given in Samaya House